Palestine, and right on cue for East Palestine, actually, we do have a train going by at the moment, so you know we're live and that we're right in downtown East Palestine. This is the first of our couple-day reporting trip. Go ahead and show folks the train going by here. I'll talk until you guys can't hear me anymore. The trains have been coming by at a regular frequency. This is probably the sixth one, maybe seventh in the last hour or so since we've been here. A couple of residents actually told us they've been kind of coming through at faster speeds than normal, and you're going to get a feel for it right now. As you can't hear me, I'll be right back after this goes by. That was perfect. Not sure how folks can hear me right now, but those cars are the ones that make me a little bit nervous standing here. That is a whole lot of tanker cars. Yeah. So I'm not sure if folks can hear me, but obviously this is a train going right through the center of East Palestine, Ohio right now. Again, this is probably the fifth or sixth train that's come through, maybe more than that, in just the last hour. This one is entirely made up of tanker cars, which is definitely a little nerve-wracking standing this close to the tracks. A couple of folks that John, who's behind the camera right now, just talked to outside of the Circle K gas station here, actually said that they've been kind of increasing in speed again as they've been coming through, which is definitely nerve-wracking considering what happened here just about a year ago now. Saturday is the 1-year anniversary of the East Palestine train derailment, as the train kind of continues to go by right here. As the train just continues to go by right there. About a 1 year ago today, right down these tracks, less than a quarter mile away, is where the Norfolk Southern train derailed on Norfolk Southern's under their control, again, just a year ago today. On this live stream, we're going to cover a couple different things and preview the trip that we have going on. John and I just got into town today, but this morning we got word that President Joe Biden finally is going to be making a trip to East Palestine sometime in February. Very little details about that situation so far, but we're going to talk about that. We'll talk about the current state of East Palestine right now. Obviously, still a lot of work being done. You're going to see over my shoulder in a second here a tanker truck hauling away or even bringing in a new tank of contaminated water that's been being hauled on and off site still. There is absolutely still a cleanup going on. There's all sorts of construction going on. So we're going to get into the state of what's going on in East Palestine today. We're going to get into what the media is actually choosing to talk about here, and it is frankly not what they should be talking about, with little exception. We're going to get into that. And then just kind of previewing what we're going to be doing over the next few days here. I will be here through the weekend. I'll be here for most of the trip. John's going to be here even a little bit longer to continue to bring you guys both live coverage and recorded interviews. So if you're just joining us right now, please, again, we're live in East Palestine, Ohio, gearing up for the 1-year anniversary of the Norfolk Southern train derailment. Please smash the like button down below. Who else has been on the ground here as much as I have? Frankly, not to say that I've been here more than everybody else, because it's not true with everybody, but not many folks can say they've been here 5 times. This is my 5th time on the ground in East Palestine in the last year. I've spent over a month. After this trip, it'll be over a month of the last year I've spent in this town trying to figure out what the hell has been going on and try to figure out what the folks in this town need and try to just get their stories out there. So please smash the like button, subscribe if you're not subscribed, and we'll talk about this later on. But if you can support these sorts of trips to actually come on the ground and listen directly from the residents, which we're going to do the rest of this trip, statuscoup.com/join, become a member. That's the best way to support us. But I want to start off with the news that we got this morning as I was on the way out here getting on the plane, that Joe Biden, frankly about 11 months too late in my opinion, is actually going to make the trek over to East Palestine. He, at one point, was able to make it to Ukraine. He's been able to make it to Japan. He's traveled to so many other places across the country that are way further away and more inconvenient to get to than here. is finally going to make his way to East Palestine. There was a press conference this afternoon. The White House did say that they're going to come sometime in February. No specific dates selected. Just before going live here, I saw a clip from Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary. She was asked about this, why they were waiting, why they hadn't come yet. And she gave a usual word salad that we're used to hearing from at this point from the press secretary's office, essentially saying that they were waiting for the right moment, that they wanted to come when they could be the most helpful. If you ask me, what would have been the most helpful was coming a lot closer to when the derailment happened, because maybe, just maybe, at that point in time, if Biden came and his staffers came, they could have seen the situation that so many residents here were dealing with, and in many cases are still dealing with, and could have intervened to try to make the situation better. Instead, waiting until they could do something about it was waiting about a year so that folks could suffer for a year. Many folks could live in hotels for a year, could be worried about their health for a year, could be worried about paying their bills for a year, and then show up. It doesn't seem like the right timing for me, but who am I? Just some guy. I don't know. On top of that, the other reason that they said that they are coming is that they actually got an invite from the mayor of East Palestine. The mayor is Trent Conaway still. There actually was a mayoral election back in November. There was somebody who was trying to challenge Mayor Conaway, Misty Allison. Mayor Conaway did end up winning re-election after all of this. Frankly, I was surprised that he ran again. I think initially he wasn't going to, but he did. And apparently he has, according to the White House, invited President Biden to come to East Palestine. It was a little bit surprising for me to hear that. Mayor Conaway is a Trump supporter. He spoke with President Trump when he was here back in February. John and I covered a lot of that back in February live when Trump actually came to East Palestine on our first reporting trip here, again, just about a year ago at this point. So I was definitely surprised to see that. I'm not sure what the mayor would be necessarily asking for from the president at this point. I don't think a lot of folks in town at this point really can get anything from the president unless he's going to deliver something to them at this point. Again, it's probably going to be too little, too late. A year later, it would have been nice for folks when they were worried about their health. Again, many still are worried about their health, but when there were so few answers at that time, would have made a lot more sense. Despite, again, Mayor Conaway giving the invite here, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance weighed in on this earlier today on Twitter. And I want to read the quote here, he described Biden deciding to come visit at this point, again, almost a year later, as, quote, pure politics, and said, quote, what can he even do at this point? I don't find myself agreeing with J.D. Vance on much, but I do tend to agree with him on those statements because, again, I'm not sure what President Biden can do at this point. 5 months ago, maybe. 6 months ago, maybe. Again, I think the time would have been a couple weeks after the disaster to come and see what was going on, see the progress. But at this point, it, again, has been almost 12 months. This Saturday will be 12 months to the day since a Norfolk Southern, like the one that just cruised by at the beginning of this live stream, train came barreling down these tracks and derailed just out of sight off to my right over here. Train derails. We got someone beeping at us. The train derails just out of sight over here, causing the initial fire, the pileup of cars that we all saw, and then the absolutely horrendous decision 3 days later by Norfolk Southern to unneedingly detonate these cars of vinyl chloride, 5 mostly full cars of vinyl chloride, amongst other things, and just essentially detonate them, set them on fire, explode them in this small town, only for 3 days later, the EPA and others tell everybody, yep, everything is fine and dandy, totally fine to go home, even though we just set on fire literally over 1 million pounds of cancer-causing vinyl chloride. You couldn't make this up in a movie if you tried to, yet, this is unfortunately the real-life scenario of what happened in this town. So, again, J.D. Vance, not psyched about this visit either. Do I think it's a good idea? I don't honestly even know at this point. This is going to have to be a very coordinated visit for the Biden campaign, in my opinion. This is going to be something where, he's not popular in this town. I think if he would have come, in the couple weeks after the derailment, around the same time that President Trump came when we were here last time, I think there was an opportunity for President Biden, for Pete Buttigieg to come in here and actually make sure that people were taken care of, actually make sure that people could be relocated, and actually make sure that the real tests, we're going to talk about the tests a little bit more later on in this live stream, but make sure that the actual appropriate tests were done to make sure that folks were taken care of here. And they could have come in and put politics aside and dealt with this the right way. I think doing it now in an election year, when at this point, we're kind of past the initial impact on folks on this. Again, there are still tons of impacts that we're going to be covering on this trip. It feels like too little, too late. He's not going to be able to have real big public events or anything like that. I just don't think it's going to go over very well for him. So it's very likely going to be a very coordinated, hand-picked visit. He'll meet the mayor, maybe a couple residents. Ultimately, we'll end up seeing what it's going to look like. Again, if we get the dates of when he's going to come, if he ends up being here on this trip, we will make sure to try to bring you as much information on that live, whether it's me and John or just John on his own coming through to do that. So that was kind of the news this morning on that. And we're going to continue on here, though, now. So like I said, we're going to have a couple different topics to cover here. For those of you just joining, again, we are live right now in East Palestine, Ohio, ahead of the 1-year anniversary of the Norfolk Southern derailment. Again, as we started this live stream, we saw one of the trains coming down right through town here. If you're just joining, though, please smash the like button, consider subscribing if you're able to do so, and consider becoming a member if you can. StatusCoup.com/join is the place to do so. I want to move on now to kind of the current state of things. Now, we're obviously going to be getting a lot more details from folks over the next few days. I'm going to give a breakdown of the trip at the end of this, but I've got interviews with about 15, maybe 20 or so residents over the next couple days. So we are going to be checking in with folks that you've definitely seen before on the channel if you're used to watching us, or from some new folks as well who are going to be meeting through just different channels of folks that we're connecting with. Jordan's been reaching out to folks. Other residents have been connecting folks with me. So we'll get into the specifics, but just the general impressions. We just got into town. I've also been the last 2 weeks catching up with a lot of residents, seeing where everything stands, how their situations are, if they're improving, if they're getting worse. But the first one was apparently obvious right at the beginning of this live stream, but also right when John and I walked into town earlier, was just the insane frequency of how many trains are coming by. This gap right now that we've had about 15 minutes is kind of the longest one since we've been in town this afternoon. So we'll see if another one comes through. But the trains are coming through fast. And as I said, when that first one was coming through, a couple of residents who work right over here in some of these stores and gas stations have made a comment to John saying, like, they're going a lot faster than they were kind of in the initial phase of this. They were moving slower through town. And now it seems like the frequency and the speed of the trains has been increasing. So that's one thing going on. Health concerns are still a major priority for folks just because of how scary that sort of thing can be. In the early days of this, you'll remember a lot of the symptoms that we were getting from folks that we were talking to. You had headaches, runny noses, sore throats. You had breathing complications. We spoke with folks who ended up in the hospital with breathing complications who had never had that sort of issue before, including young people, kids, and the like. Folks with stomach problems, folks with lots of bloody noses, scary, scary things. And those symptoms that I just laid out right there were happening in large quantities over the first couple months of this. Some people didn't have them in the beginning and then started to develop them later, others vice versa. And some people have kind of had them throughout this. So a lot of those symptoms still are persisting in numbers that are alarming, that are raising red flags. That still need to be looked into. And again, while those symptoms have been happening, the EPA the entire time has told folks that everything is fine without really addressing why folks in that quantity have been dealing with those symptoms. And again, this isn't necessarily just residents who had dealt with those things. You'll remember the story from, I believe it was the end of March of last year. CNN actually covered this, that CDC workers who were here in East Palestine, not even working at the derailment site, just working in town, going door to door, trying to do a study, actually got sick in enough numbers. There was a handful of them here in town, and most of them got sick to the point where after being here for 24 hours, they left because they were all getting sick. So you have hundreds of residents, maybe thousands, complaining of health issues. You have members of the legitimate CDC having health issues, and the EPA tells everybody, well, all of our tests come back fine, so we're not really sure why that's happening to you, but our tests tell us there's nothing to worry about. That is insane. So we're still going to continue to make sure we're putting, kind of at the top of all of this, that this disaster very well could turn into, in the next couple years, some much scarier health symptoms than runny noses and sore throats and all of that sort of stuff. But, again, vinyl chloride is a carcinogen. Many of the other chemicals on board that train are carcinogens. When you set those things on fire, they make additional chemicals and toxins that can cause cancer, whether it be hydrogen chloride, whether it be formaldehyde, whether it be phosgene, whether it be dioxin. A lot of these chemicals we've covered in depth on this channel, and they are all things that can be produced in this. And many of those compounds that I talked about have, the EPA's devices that had been used, according to experts, not according to me, according to experts, the devices that have been used are not doing a great job of picking those chemicals up, among other things. So health concerns are going to be a major piece to all of this. One person that we're going to talk to, which is a little bit of a follow-up from our last trip, we spoke with a husband and wife, and the husband in this case, he actually, towards the end of the summer, began developing a type of breast cancer. We don't necessarily, I'm not going to make the tie here. We are going to talk to them in depth tomorrow to see if we can gain any more information. It might be too soon for it to be related, but it also might not be. And again, it wouldn't be crazy for those sorts of things to be happening, especially as we get further and further into this situation. I'll mention the CDC one more time. Back in April or May of this year, there was a town hall put on in East Palestine, joint between the EPA and the CDC, and an administrator from the CDC, when answering a resident's question, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but it's almost a direct quote, told these residents, you know what, I'm sorry, we don't know how to remove these chemicals from your body, but we do know how to treat your cancers later. That is it's horrible that how direct that was, but at the same time, that might be one of the most truthful things that a federal government employee has unfortunately told residents here. I hope I'm wrong. I do hope I'm wrong. But based on, again, the experts that we've been talking to over the course of this story, other experts that are kind of, putting their careers on the line in a lot of cases to criticize these agencies, are the ones who are concerned about this sort of thing. So, in addition to health concerns, though, a couple other things of note that we've noticed being in town here. Again, downtown East Palestine is really just kind of right over my shoulder here. We're right along the tracks here on the corner of East Taggart and North Market Street. The one thing we've been noticing, though, for sale signs, it's not like they're everywhere. I won't pretend that they're everywhere, but we took a little bit of a walk and drive around town earlier. East Clark Street, which we've interviewed several residents who live along that street over the last year, over the last several trips that we've done here, folks like Jenna Catone, folks like Lonnie Miller, and several others. And there are a lot of homes in that area still for sale. There are a couple of commercial properties for sale right in downtown here. Some of the homes for sale on East Clark Street I know have been for sale for at least a couple of months at this point, because I know that they were for sale a while ago. They're still for sale now. So that's something that we're going to be asking folks about who are relocated, who are, some of them are back in their homes, some of them have moved, is how easy that process has been for folks to try to sell their homes. So that's been interesting. Another interesting piece that we've kind of noticed on our way into town was our trip from the airport over in Pittsburgh became a bit shorter because Taggart Street, which is kind of the street that runs right along the tracks here that are just behind you all, it is open now all the way through to the Pennsylvania line. That street had been closed for like 10 months while the cleanup process was ongoing along the tracks. Basically the road had been just taken over by Norfolk Southern contractors who were hauling dirt, who were hauling water, train cars, all sorts of stuff in and out of the site. So definitely interesting to see Taggart Street open. And if you're a Status Coup member, actually, it's not going to be up yet, but just before we started this live stream, I sent a video to Colin of what Taggart Street looks like on that drive-through. It was actually our first time even being able to see it, just because, again, it had been closed for months and months. It had been closed for almost a year, again, just like a lot of, this whole thing's been going on that long. But so it was interesting to see Taggart Street open. If you're a member, keep an eye out for that video, maybe coming later tonight or tomorrow. If you're not a member and you want to see some of those behind-the-scenes things, John and I are going to make sure that we are recording some special member videos throughout our trip here. If you want to become a member to support these trips, you can do so literally for $5 a month. You can do 10 if you want to also. That would be awesome. But $5 a month, I'm personally guilty of spending $5 a month on all sorts of random bullshit. Frankly, if you can't, it's fine. I will deal. But if you can spend the $5 a month, it goes a long way to making sure that we can continue to cover stories like this and not just go once. Go back 1, 2, 3, 4. Literally, this is the 5th time that I'll be on the ground here in East Palestine in the last 12 months. There's not a lot of other folks who are covering this story in that same depth. So if you're able to, statuscoup.com/join. You can also, if you want to make a one-time donation to help make these sorts of things possible, statuscoup.com/donate is another way. If you want to leave a one-time donation so that, it's just another option for folks to make sure that we can continue to do this. Because whether it's here in East Palestine, whether it's the reporting Tina's done in Atlanta over the last year, whether it's John going to all sorts of protests and making sure that, there's media covering these things, whether it's Jordan covering everything in Flint and Kalamazoo and all these other places, it makes a huge difference, that $5 a month coming from folks. So we definitely appreciate that. And then the last thing we're noticing is the media is kind of, starting to talk about this again, but like I said at the beginning of this, not in the way that you necessarily would think that they'd be talking about this. There's little exception to this rule. We actually just ran into the News Nation guys just before this. News Nation, there's one of their reporters has actually been on this, actually been on the ground. We've seen each other quite around. Whew. I'm out of practice. I haven't been talking to the camera this long in a while. Anyway. Media is back in town. News Nation's done a good job, as we have, obviously, covering this sort of thing. But so many other outlets are basically saying, oh, Norfolk Southern's hauled away X numbers of trucks of dirt and water and all of this sorts of stuff away. Here's a progress report on how it's going, blah, 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 with no regard for the fact that there are still residents who are living in hotel rooms. Yes. A year later, there are still residents who are living in hotel rooms. That is a disgrace. A year later, there are still residents who basically wanted to get out, couldn't afford to get out. The railroad wouldn't help them, and basically are stuck moving back into their homes and are getting sick. We're going to talk to some of those residents tomorrow who basically had to move back into their home and are sick since doing so, have not been doing well since doing so. They leave for a full day, leave, get out of town, feel good, come home, don't feel good. That is an issue, and that really isn't being covered a lot by mainstream media. I'm sure that's not going to be talked about by President Biden and his team whenever they decide to show up either, and that's a big concern I have with this. The media loves to cover how many homes were tested, how many soil samples. They love to talk about the tests. I'm sorry, but, you know, taking the EPA's word as its gospel is not reporting. Just taking what they say and regurgitating it out the other side is not reporting. I feel horrible for whatever person at the EPA used to have to answer my emails in the beginning of this, asking questions about testing, because I would just hammer them. And I learned from the best, because Jordan, this is props to Jordan. You got to hammer them on every single detail and take their reply and ask a follow-up on it. And when you see that they're just catching themselves in little lies, catching themselves in little issues with each of their tests, and when you can get folks who are PhD professors, who are, you know, experts in these subjects, to be like, look, like, what they're saying is wrong, here's why, ask them why, and that we had those people lined up and ready to go, and we are a team of basically like a couple of people. Like, it's Jordan and John and Colin and like a lot of people who are trying to do little bits and pieces. But if I can do that, if we can do that, where are organizations like CNN and Fox and MSNBC and so many others? Why are they not using the resources that they have, which is like literally, I'm not even exaggerating, 1,000x what we have, probably more what we have. And we're the ones who had to figure those out. I broke the story at the end of March about the air testing devices just that they use for residential home tests to clear homes, to tell people it was safe to move back in, couldn't pick up chemicals of concern until it was above the action level. I broke that story in March. We put it out. It did fairly well and everything. You know, it's on Substack. You can go look it up. It took like almost 3.5 months, maybe 4 months for another outlet to do anything with it. And then they put it out like it's news and everything, but like where were the media? Like these folks I say these folks like they're right here. They're not, but I'm sure they're in town. They're probably sitting in a hotel instead of freezing their ass off outside like I am. But where were they asking those questions? And why aren't they still trying to ask questions now? Instead, they're basically just taking the word from the EPA, from Norfolk Southern like it's gospel, and just moving on. Insane to me. It's insane to me. It's to talk about some of the experts though too. I've noticed, especially in the last month here, Dr. Andrew Welton, who we've talked about on the show before. We've shared some of his research on the show before. Shared some of what he's highlighting on Twitter. He's been a great resource to a lot of residents that I've spoken with. And he's also answered some questions and emails from us too. So we thank him for that. But he even recently still is highlighting this, that the media is not talking about some of the deeper issues here. And folks like him who, I mean, the guy's a professor at Purdue University. He's not going to go out and openly criticize federal agencies, some of which I'm sure that, they're coming from, Purdue University gets grant money from a lot of these agencies. He's not going to go out and put his career on the line unless he knows he's right on so many of these things. And he's pointed out the flaws in the testing, whether it be residential air testing, water testing, and the like. And the fact that, the tests are saying everything's fine, then why were so many residents getting sick? Why were members of the CDC getting sick? And the response from the EPA throughout all of this, and from Norfolk Southern throughout all of this, has just been, well, we did the tests and the tests came back and everything's fine. When clearly, I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that it's not. So it's been issue after issue after issue, and it just continuously falls back to incompetence from the government at all levels, really. I mean, there's been issues with the local government, the state government for sure, as well as the federal government throughout all of this. And then also the railroad company, of course, who caused all of this in the first place, Norfolk Southern. Jordan put out a video on this earlier today. The fact that it's like known now that Norfolk Southern was told by the company that owned the vinyl chloride that was in these cars that they did not need to detonate these cars of vinyl chloride. Like, they told them that 3 times. The gentleman from the the company that owned the vinyl chloride, Oxyvinyl, I believe it was, testified at the NTSB hearing in June that they advised Norfolk Southern 3 times that their advice was to not detonate the cars in the fashion that they did. What did Norfolk Southern do? Seemingly withheld that information from the rest of the Unified Command and then told them that the best course would be to detonate those cars in this small town. That is insane that no one is... Sure, there's fines and Norfolk Southern is paying some stuff, but like, there really should be some criminal liability involved in all of that. And the fact that no one is even talking about that is insane. It's insane. I mean, if I had the ability to put up the imagery of what that looked like, of what they called a controlled burn for months, and we like jokingly call it a controlled burn because this is ridiculous, and we said it enough to the point where they actually don't call it a controlled burn anymore, that is not okay, and that put this entire town at risk, as well as all of the people where that giant plume of smoke blew towards. I mean, that thing is not like there's a little bubble around town in that 1 mile radius where they told everyone to evacuate. There are all sorts of people in Ohio, but also in Pennsylvania, who have been absolutely screwed during this entire ordeal. There is another train going by, so I'm actually, there's another train going by. If the audio gets weird, that is why. It's absolutely insane, though, that these folks are still needing to deal with all of this. And Norfolk Southern, sure, they are, you know, they're paying fines and whatnot, but this seems like a slap on the wrist in comparison to what actually should be going on here. Another train going by here. Hey, John. 1 second, folks. Another train going by here. It's ridiculous, though, that this is still going on. I want to give you guys a look at another train coming by here. You want to? I just need a sip of water. I'm going to get a sip of water. I'll be right back, folks. I'm going to get a sip of water here. Check out those. Another train coming through East Palestine right now. Again, if you're just joining us right now, we are live in downtown East Palestine, Ohio. This is another Norfolk Southern train cruising through town. I mean, this thing's going quick. Again, if you missed it earlier, John was talking to a couple workers at some of the little stores right along the tracks here in town. And they were pointing out the fact that these trains have been coming through here a lot faster than they had been over the last couple of months. Kind of back up to their normal fast speeds right through here. All right, there was another train there. Oh, yeah. You're good. Hold on 1 second, guys. We're going to change one battery here. We might go... Are we going to go black for a second? We're going to go black for a second, but stick with us. We're going to change a battery, and we'll be right back. Definitely stick with us. Smash the like button if you are just joining. We'll be right back. Loan, statuscoup.com/join. It makes a huge difference to be able to support these trips and to be able to do what I'm going to outline for you in a second, which is kind of go through the trip. So tomorrow, we're going to have a handful of interviews. We're going to catch up with Stella and Darren in the morning. They are back in their home in East Palestine. We're going to check in with them. It sounds like Stella is starting to have some health issues again since moving back into town. So we are going to check in with them and get the latest there. We're also going to be speaking. It should be live tomorrow night, actually. So if you're not subscribed and you want to catch this, we're going to be speaking to Rick Chai, who we spoke to on our second trip to East Palestine. He's a resident who kind of initially became known for a lot of the work he was doing, kind of uncovering the fact that the creeks in town were still heavily, heavily contaminated, even into Leslie Run, far after, everyone was saying that things were mostly fine. Rick was actually out there stirring up and seeing where the contaminants had spread, all of this stuff. He has actually since then, him and his wife started raising money to help try to get local families out who couldn't afford to leave on their own. In the last month or so now, though, Rick has announced that he is actually running for U.S. Congress. So he is currently in primary season right now, and we're going to have an interview with him live tomorrow. I believe we're going to be around 5:30, maybe 6 o'clock. Make sure you're subscribed. Hit the bell for notifications. You don't want to miss that one. I'm excited to hear his motivations for running. I know that the derailment is a huge part of the reason why he is kind of going down this route to try to go out and fight for his community. So I'm curious to talk to Rick about that. In the evening, I think we're going to be doing an interview. This one won't be live. We'll record it with Candace. Candace was actually one of the first people in East Palestine that we interviewed. I remember just in town right over there. It was like the first full day there, and she had me almost in tears. I did not know what I was getting myself into on that first trip. I don't think any of us knew what we were getting ourselves into on that first trip. Just how afraid she was, just like so many other parents were, about what is this going to do health-wise with their kids. So many other different things. So we'll be catching up with Candace tomorrow. Here, I want to make sure I'm not leaving anybody else out. We're also going to be catching up with Ashley McCollum. Many of you have seen Ashley in live streams over the last couple of years. We've done a lot of checking in with Ashley in between trips as well. And then also tomorrow we'll be with Lori and her husband, who we talked about a little bit earlier in the show. Her husband, unfortunately, had recently kind of been diagnosed with breast cancer. Again, not necessarily tying it to this right now, but we are going to talk to them to get the latest update. I know Lori has also been dealing with some health issues as well. She lives just over the line in Pennsylvania. So that'll be tomorrow. Jam-packed today. Friday, we're going to have a couple things. We're going to check in with Chrissy Ferguson. Chrissy lives just in town over here. The creek literally runs under, and we've got another train coming by here. The creek runs literally under her backyard. So that will be that. That was a loud one. Chrissy lives right in town. The contaminated creek runs right through her backyard. Do you want to spin around so we can have that in the background? The creek runs right through her backyard. Getting the full experience here. So we'll be checking in with Chrissy. In the afternoon on Friday, we're going to be doing a tour of the creeks in East Palestine with Christina Seisloff and one of her friends. Kind of go see where they are now, what sort of contamination still lies in the creeks at this point. And then, so that'll be a really interesting one. I'm kind of excited to do the check-in on the creeks and see what everything looks like. And then lastly, Friday night, we're going to be checking in. I believe we're going to have 5 or 6 people live on Friday night. Still working out who, but we're hoping to get a small group of residents together, 5 or 6 people, and kind of just see how everybody has been doing collectively, different issues and whatnot, from a bigger group of people. Apologies here. It's hard to talk over the train right now, but we wanted to give you that. Yeah, and then Saturday. Saturday is going to be a big day. I will not be here for the entire day, but Status Coup will be here for the entire day. On Saturday, John is going to be live from a couple events on Saturday, likely. Saturday evening, there's an event here in town. And then there are a few events in one town over in Columbiana throughout the day. We will kind of solidify which events are going to be at Saturday as we get closer. That gives you a good idea of where things are going at this point. And I believe we have some super chats here. All right, bear with us, folks. Alrighty. So we do have a couple super chats coming in right now. I am going to start to wrap this up. Give me 1 second. I see the end of I don't see the end of the train. It's a long one. All right, so super chats. First one, Tony D, $1.99. Thank you for staying on this story so much. Tony D, thank you so much for the support. Woo! That scared me. Thank you for the support, Tony D. We appreciate it. I know we see you in the comments all the time. Thank you for being a member. 2 new members as well, Nancy and Fiona. Nancy and Fiona, thank you so much for becoming members to enable us to continue telling this story. We also have $5 from Penny. I appreciate your integrity and coverage of East Palestine, but I do not understand how you promote electric vehicles as a solution to climate change. Lithium and cobalt mining are also destructive, and the batteries catch fire. Penny, I'm actually not a huge person pushing electric vehicles. I would rather see a major push into public transportation and that sort of things. I think electric vehicles probably play a role, but apologies. But that's, yeah, I think what we're doing now is not great. I agree that a lot of that mining is also destructive. Burning fossil fuels is also destructive. I'm not in a position standing along the side of the road on this railroad to answer that question in full, though. But I appreciate the donation, and I appreciate you watching us. Even if we might disagree on some other things, I think everyone should be able to agree that allowing something like this to happen in a small town like this should not happen anywhere. I want to point out that this train is really, really long in comparison to the last ones. And I believe it was a longer train like this that is the one that derailed on that night about a year ago, where the train is so long that it's hard to even tell where this sort of thing happened. So just keep in mind, I mean, these long trains like this are still coming through town, still at high speeds, still carrying various tanker cars and the like. So definitely interesting that the folks of East Palestine, still a year later, are still having to deal with this. I apologize if I'm sounding crazy while we're talking like that. I'm trying to yell over the noise of that. At this point, though, I'm going to just make sure we're not missing anything. I am going to start to wrap this up. Again, definitely stay tuned over the next couple days. We are going to have a ton of coverage, a ton of interviews coming to you. We will be live again tomorrow night, again, with Rick Chai, who's running for U.S. Congress, currently involved in the primary here. So you definitely want to stay tuned for that. Here, I'm going to move out of the sidewalk just because someone's coming here. But so you definitely want to stay tuned for that. I am going to wrap this up, though. Thank you all so much for watching. We will see you tomorrow night. Again, if you're able to support the reporting that we've been doing in East Palestine over the last year, StatusCoup.com/join. And we're happy to continue to try to bring it to you as much as we can. Thank you all so much. Cool. Bye, my phone. Yeah, you're good.